Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary, 1st of 2008, direct from our newsroom, otherwise known as my Compost Heap. Let's see what stories we're working on this week. Well, here we go. Parting the Waters, the story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This week, on his anniversary of his birthday, New Haven will have events all over town of politicians and others, remembering those great words of Dr. King and seeing what they mean today. He'd been to the mountaintop. He dreamed of a better day. Now, what would Martin Luther King think if he came to New Haven today? What would he say at these events? If he looked at the political plantation that is New Haven, what would he think about all these elected officials who take jobs with the city government that they're supposed to challenge, who trade the ability of their communities to challenge power, to speak independently and determine their course in return for their own advancement? I don't know if Dr. Martin Luther King meant that when he said he'd been to the mountaintop. What other stories are you working on? Rulers. We know, all of us who have been to school, and a lot of us have, what a ruler is good for, what it could be used for. It could be used to learn and to make measurements, or it can be used to wrap the fingers of people who ask too many questions that people who run schools don't want to hear. I was thinking about that this week because, once again, the people in charge of the school system and City Hall went out of their way to attack some of the few critics in town who think the schools aren't doing good enough for students. They're trying to discredit them, trying to intimidate them, trying to ruin their organizations rather than engage them. And I wonder if Martin Luther King would agree with that, or if Martin Luther King would agree with Michelle Rhee, who is the new superintendent of schools in Washington, D.C. She was interviewed recently by the Wall Street Journal, and they said to her, "What do you think about charter schools?" Now, these people in New Haven are critics. They believe some of the charter schools do better, like Amistad Academy for poor kids. People in New Haven say they're just out to get more money away from public schools, and that's bad for us. We got to stop them. Here's what Michelle Rhee said. They said, "Well, what do you think about charter schools? Because you're running a public school system." She said, "I don't enter this with defensiveness about protecting public schools' share of the market. I believe we should proliferate what's working and close down what's not, period. My goal is to create schools within the system that I believe are the most compelling choices." Michelle Rhee sits down with parents who yell at her in public and say she's doing a bad job. She invites them to her office. She says, quote, "People have to have the opportunity to vent, to be angry, and they want to do that at me specifically." Michelle Rhee said, "I see this as a social justice issue. I want them all," meaning students, "to be in excellent schools." I wonder if Martin Luther King might think that way instead. What else we got here? What other stories? Hey, the Yale Bulldog on a Kiddish Cup. You read the news about Yale this week. You could be rich now in America, make $180,000 a year, and send your kid to Yale for less money than daycare costs, less money than it costs to send your kid to a good daycare center. Wow! I think Martin Luther King would be very happy about that. You know, there are so many trends we bemoan in our society, and we have to look at them. And one of those trends was, well, you know, higher education just gets so expensive, out of the reach of even the middle class. And the reason we were upset about that is because the elites become the only ones who can send their kids to the best education, and that perpetuates the elite. Well, here's a reminder with this news this week, not just at Yale, that sometimes change does happen for the better. That's the best message of Martin Luther King. Don't give up hope. Until next time, this is the New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary, and remember, keep hope alive.